I'm Marin from Chanhassen Library, and I'm going to be sharing some books with you that I think are appropriate for the new year. January is a time when a lot of us are thinking about some goals and doing some self-reflection, and I think these books really speak to that. The first one I have is called Bread Therapy, The Mindful Art of Baking Bread by Pauline Beaumont. And this book is actually about baking bread, but along with that, she shares some life lessons that relate to the process of baking bread. It's a very mindful process that engages all of the senses, from touch when you're kneading the dough to the smell of the bread when it's baking. And it relates a lot to lessons we can learn in life. And one of the chapters she has is called Accepting Imperfection. And she talks about how, lots of times the bread doesn't turn out, it's too hard, or it's got a burned loaf in the pan. And that life, too, we're not always going to have things go perfect in our life, and that you can relate to that. So anyway, this was a nice book, good to think about. The next book I have is called Mindfulness for Children, Simple Activities for Parents and Children to Create Greater Focus, Resilience, and Joy by Sarah Rudell Beach. And even though this is a book that's targeted to parents, I think it's a great book for anybody to read and get some ideas from on how to build mindfulness activities, what that's all about. They're ones that an adult can do just as well as a child. For example, one of the activities is how to settle your mind. Sometimes I have like a million things going on in my head, and I just can't have a hard time focusing. And this activity is called My Mind in a Jar, making mind jars a craft that's a great way to teach children about how mindfulness practice helps them calm down and focus. So it wouldn't be just for kids. I think an adult could benefit from this too. So you create a jar with water in it, you put glitter and other objects that are going to float or sink faster. You shake the jar up and then watch the particles settle down in the jar. And that's a great way to think about how your mind is racing a million miles a minute, and you just need a moment to calm down and focus. So you could use that as an activity to help calm the brain. So I think we all need some things like that sometimes. And there's just a lot of other good ideas in it too. So great if you have a kid, especially for these times, but also just as an adult.
Hi, I'd like to share with you one of my favorite authors, and this will make great winter reading, as there are 7 books in the series. The first one is called Killer in King's Cove. It is by Vancouver author Iona Wishaw. Her mysteries are loosely based on her mother and grandfather's experiences as spies in World War II. Lane Winslow, the main character, is weary after her harrowing experiences in the resistance in the war. She retreats to a rural British Columbia in the mountains in a small village called King's Cove, where she buys an old home and begins to fix it up. The first book, Killer in King's Cove, a corpse is discovered in the water supply to Lane's house, another home, and a local farm. And she and the local farmer investigate and find a corpse blocking the route for the water to her farm and another homestead. The corpse has Lane Winslow's name in his pocket on a piece of paper, and that's his only identification. And the local inspector in Nelson, Inspector Darling, comes very close to uncovering Lane's background in the war, and she's quite concerned about that. The second book, Death in a Darkening Mist, has a Russian man found at a local hot springs. When Iona and one of her neighbors go to the hot springs to relax, they discover the body. And there's possibly a Russian tie to a group of Russian emigres, or is it a Cold War thing? Inspector Darling is quite concerned, and again, Lane helps him out, whether he likes it or not. In An Old Cold Grave, number 3, a body is discovered in a root cellar belonging to one of Lane's favorite neighbors. Here's the title, An Old Cold Grave. The body is that of a child, and there's a lot of secrets and strange goings-on that Lane's helps to uncover. The fact that she knows her neighbors so well, she's able to really help Inspector Darling get to the bottom of it. In A Match Made for Murder, Lane and Inspector Darling, this is number 7 in the series. You can see we have quite a few books to read this winter. Lane and Inspector Darling are in Tucson for several weeks, and as usual, they encounter a murder and some very strange goings-on. Back in Nelson, British Columbia, Sergeant Ames investigates a case of vandalism. When the suspected vandal is found dead in a locked car, run off the road, and the keys are not in the car, he is left to solve an extremely odd murder without any help from Darling or Lane. Enjoy. Hi, this is Kathy Pershman. I'm a retired librarian. I used to work at the Chanhassen branch. This is one of my favorite books from this winter so far, Fortune Favors the Dead by Stephen Spotswood. This book is extremely unusual. It begins in 1942. Willow Jean Will Parker is a 19-year-old circus worker who crosses paths one fateful night with a PI in New York City. Will is moonlighting as a night watchman at a construction site, and she meets up with a very unusual woman who breaks into the site. It is private investigator Lillian Pentecost. Will has picked up knife throwing for her circus work, and she ends up saving Lillian's life as Lillian accosts a murderer. Long story short, the PI offers Will a home, training, a job as her assistant. 3 years go by, and Will begins telling us the story of their toughest case so far, a locked room mystery. Abigail Collins, the widow of a steel company magnate, is found dead in her husband's locked study, a typical locked room mystery, with her head bashed in with the crystal ball belonging to the spiritualist that she had hired for entertainment for her big Halloween party. There are tons of suspects. Her 2 children, twins, they're in their 20s. The godfather of the children, who also works at the steel company. Many of the steel company workers and administrators were there at the party that night. Abigail is found sitting at the desk where her husband had shot himself a year before. The room was locked, no one could get in. What actually happened? Hi, this is Kathy Pershman from the Chanhassen Library, retired librarian. I'd like to share a book with you that I think you'd like for winter reading. It's a good escape. It is called Lady Takes the Case by Eliza Casey, and it's the first in a series of 2. The book is set in 1912 Yorkshire at Danby Hall. Titled An Impoverished Gentry, the Earl and Countess of Avebury, their son Patrick, who loves botanical research, and their daughter Cecilia, who loves books and reading, are hoping to be saved from their poverty by rich American heiress Annabel Clark. Annabel arrives at their estate with a maid that she acquired in New York City, Jane, and her cat, Jack. Jane and Jack become good friends with Cecilia. At one of the first dinner parties, one of their guests, a famous traveler and explorer, is poisoned. It's a gruesome death. He was sitting right next to Annabel, She becomes hysterical and claims that he mistakenly drank from her wine glass. Is she the real victim? The potential victim? What is going on? While the explorer and traveler was well known, not many people knew him personally, and no one knows much about his background. Will Jane and Cecilia be able to solve the case before anything else happens? Patrick is one of the main suspects because of his research into medicinal plants.
Hi from Carver County. My name is Bridget, talking about Winter Reads. Want to focus today on cozy mysteries. Cozy mysteries are great because they come out pretty frequently within a series, and every time we open it, it's like revisiting an old friend and hearing what happened to them in their new adventures. Usually they stumble onto crime while doing basic things. Joanne Fluke here stumbles onto crime as she works in her bakery. This is number 25, Coconut Layer Cake Murder. Her protagonist, Hannah Swenson, is a relatable, fun, loving character, and she just tends to solve these mysteries, sometimes with police help and sometimes on her own. Hannah Swenson also bakes throughout her book, and each of her books have lots of great recipes, which the author Joanne Fluke has incorporated into this lake eating cookbook. So as you're reading the series, you can hear about things that you like or sound delicious, and guess what? You can actually check out a cookbook that tells you how to make them. How much better does it get? On top of that, she also has a Hallmark series where they feature her characters in movies. Here's one called The Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder. These are all at our Carver County location. I hope you enjoy the books, I hope you enjoy the cookbook, and I hope you enjoy the Hallmark movies. Thanks.